Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay and our guest today is Rupert Spira. Hello Rupert, and we are very happy to have Rupert back. And I have a lot of books to introduce. Rupert has 2 new books out which are actually coming out in fall with Non-Duality Press, and I just have a download. And they are both 2 volumes of presents with different subtitles. We are talking about it later. Rupert's first book, The Transparency of Things, you know already. And I also would like to show you a book which came out through Conscious TV, Conversations on Non-Duality, which is a wonderful book. And there are also Rupert's 2 interviews in this book. Rupert's first 2 interviews with us. Okay, Rupert, so my first question is, why presents? Why did you call your books presents?
The book is about the nature of our experience. And in most cases, there is a presumption that our experience is divided into 2 essential parts. An inside part, the inside self, and an outside part, the object, the other, or the world. So this belief that there is an inside self that knows the outside world is the presumption that underlies almost all of our thoughts, feelings, activities and relationships. But if we look at either of these 2 parts of experience, these apparent parts of experience, we don't find that experience is divided into 2 essential ingredients. So the term presence was really to indicate this. If we can explore either side, either the inside self or the outside world. If we explore the outside world, before we know anything about the world, before we know what it is, we know that it is. That there is something.
Yeah.
It has existence. Even if we don't know what it is. In fact, we don't know what it is. But it is. Likewise, before we know anything about ourself, we know that I am. That is beyond doubt. It is self-evident. We may not know what I am, but we know that I am. So, if we explore what the world is and what I am, we don't find 2 separate ingredients there. We find that the isness of the world and the amness of myself are not 2 things. Advaita, not 2 things. They are one and the same. So, what can we call this? Presence is the word that I use to indicate this absolute lack of 2 things, lack of an inside self and an outside world. But it's not an inert presence, it's an aware presence that is shared by both the apparent outside world and the apparently inside self. So that's the title is a word that points towards the essential reality of our experience.
Okay, so a lot of people would say, yes, I know that. But from knowing that to actually experience that, how can we experience that?
You say a lot of people know that.
Yeah,
but
intellectually understand.
Okay.
That
Okay.
have the intellectual understanding of.
Okay. It doesn't matter which side we start with. So let's start with ourselves.
Right.
Your experience in this moment appears to you as a mind, a body, and a world. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's all you're experiencing. In fact, we don't really experience a mind, a body, and a world. Those are labels. What we experience is more intimate than that. It's thoughts, sensations, and perceptions. And by perceptions, I mean sights, sounds, tastes, textures, smells. So we know thoughts and images. We know bodily sensations. And we know perceptions of the so-called world. Yes? Mm-hmm. Just now, that's your experience. These words, yeah. Your thoughts, your bodily sensations. And what is it that knows them?
I.
Okay. What is that I? It's obviously not made out of a thought.
No.
Because you take a thought. What a beautiful day it is here in West London today. You know that thought. It comes and it goes, but you don't come and go with it. When the thought vanishes, you don't vanish with it.
That's right. Yeah.
So you're obviously not made out of a thought. Mm-hmm. So what else could this I be? You rub your hands together, or a bodily sensation.
The I could be the body.
Okay, so take the body. You rub your hands together, a sensation appears called the body. Yes, my hands. We name this sensation my hands.
Yes.
Yes. Now, you, the one that knows this sensation, is not made out of that sensation, because the sensation disappears.
Yes.
Yes, it's no longer present. Are you still present?
Yeah.
So you are not made out of a sensation. You know sensations, but you're not made out of a sensation. And likewise, perceptions of the world, obviously. You don't think that you're made out of, for instance, the sound of this voice or this wall is a perception. Mm-hmm. They come and go. In fact, our only knowledge of the world is perception. In fact, we don't even know a world. We just know perception. And perception's always coming and going. But you are not coming and going. You remain. So you know that you are present. That is the most obvious fact of your experience. You know that it is I that am hearing these words. It's perfectly obvious that this I is not made out of a thought. It's not made out of a sensation. It's not made out of a perception. What is it made out of? What can you say about it for sure?
I exist. I'm here.
You can say, I am, exactly.
I am.
I am. In other words, I am present.
Yeah.
Whatever this I is, it is. I am.
Okay, good.
So, okay, perfect. That's the first thing we can say. Now, what else can you say about yourself? Just
I'm awake.
Based on your experience.
Yeah.
You're
awake.
awake. You're awake or aware.
I'm aware.
Yes, you're aware. So I am both present and I am aware.
Yeah.
I am an aware presence. Or I am awareness, which simply means I am the presence of that which is aware. And what else can you say about yourself? From your experience in this moment, and don't refer to thinking, refer to yourself.
Okay, I sit here, there's looking, seeing.
But what else can you say about yourself, about this aware presence? There isn't always looking and seeing and sitting. So looking and hearing and sitting are not essential to yourself. They come and go. What else is essential? Do you come and go?
No,
Have you ever experienced...
I'm always here.
You're always here, yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced the disappearance of yourself?
No.
Did you experience the appearance of yourself?
Well, I experience it when I fall to sleep.
But if you say you experience it when you fall asleep, then something must be awake,
To realize
experiencing the body falling asleep.
Yeah.
So in other words, you don't fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now go back closely to your experience again and ask yourself, do I ever experience myself disappearing?
No.
Could you
No.
ever?
No.
Did you experience yourself appearing?
I only disappear when I get engaged in thinking. Then then
so
there
you
is
say-
something there
Okay.
who is...
All right. You say, I disappear when thinking appears.
Yeah.
But when thinking appears, you are present, experiencing or knowing your thinking. So you can't have disappeared. Yes? Just take a thought now. Go back to the thought.
Yeah.
What a beautiful day it is in West London today.
Yeah.
Yes? You must have been present throughout that thought.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't disappear.
No.
You think you disappear. The
Yes.
thought, I disappear,
Yes.
when thinking appears, takes place. But that is known by you.
Yeah.
You must have been present there.
Yeah.
So you didn't disappear. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now go
I'm
back.
still here.
You're still perfect. Now go back to your experience, staying very close. Don't go into philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Stay close to your experience. Go back and ask yourself, have I ever had, or could I ever have, the experience of myself appearing or disappearing?
Well, I would say no.
Yes, you're right. Because something would have had to be there present to witness this appearance. If it is your experience,
Yeah.
then you would have had to be there present to witness it, to witness this apparent appearance. So
Yeah.
we have no knowledge of the appearance or disappearance. When I say knowledge, I mean no experience, no experiential knowledge of the appearance or disappearance of ourself. So why do we think that we were born and will die?
That's a good question.
Yes, it's a good question, and it's a very important question, because almost all our thoughts, feelings, activities and relationships are based upon the belief that I am going to die.
Yeah.
It obviously doesn't appear to be the case when we're looking for a new activity, for a new relationship, when we're just thinking idly. It doesn't appear to be the case that underneath this thought is the fear of disappearance or dying. But if we look closely, if we're courageous enough and honest enough to look closely at what motivates us, much of the time we find this fear of disappearing initiates much of our thinking and feeling, and therefore our subsequent activities and relationships. So it's not just a good question, it's the question.
Yeah.
It's the question upon which everything else depends. The answer we get to that question radically alters and affects our life. And really, until we answer that question, all other questions are really of secondary importance. Because all other questions will be based upon the belief that I, this aware presence, am going to go. I'm a fragile little entity, I live in here, and when this goes, I'm going with it. Until that question has been answered, I don't mean intellectually answered in a conversation, I mean in the intimacy of our own experience. Until that question has been satisfactorily answered.
So Rupert, it is so obvious who we are.
Exactly. Isn't it the most obvious thing?
Yes. And how could we ever get so lost as a human race?
we've just been educated by our culture from a very, very early age to believe that what I am is a thought or a collection of thoughts and images plus a cluster of bodily sensations. And not only have we been told it, but our entire culture is subliminally feeding us this message all the time. And it starts in the cradle, with our parents treating us like an object, like an image. So we absorb, and as a baby we absorb in a pre-rational, pre-verbal way. We absorb that everything that our culture is feeding us, that I am this vulnerable, fleeting entity. And then it's reinforced in more and more sophisticated ways as we grow old, until by the time we're 8 or 9 years old, this deep sense that what I am, this aware presence, is synonymous with, is located within, and is synonymous with this little corner of experience.
Right.
I live in here, thinking, looking, hearing. I live in here, feeling, loving. I live in here, doing, moving.
Yeah.
And this, by the age of 8 or 9, it seems to be so obviously true that it's the given. It's the fundamental presumption from then on. This is how things are. And then on top of that belief, we build belief upon belief upon belief upon belief. And the whole structure of our knowledge from then on is based upon this presumption. In fact, we no longer even know, we're no longer even aware that there is this presumption. It's just considered to be absolutely true. And then, of course, we wonder over and over and over again why there is a sense in our life of unfulfillment, of unhappiness. Why are we always in search? Why does everything more or less subtly seem to fail us? Could it be that something to do with this fundamental presumption that experience is divided into an inside self and an outside world? Could the issue reside there? But most of us, obviously not here, and not those of us that are watching, listening to this and similar interviews, but who are obviously very open to this, but most of us are so afraid to even begin to ask this question. Why? Because the self-image that we have built up, the idea of ourself, this entity, it's so late. We've invested our identity, the identity of the inside self, with so much potential that to begin to question it, to come to what you rightly say is the most obvious fact of experience. I'm not a thought or an image or a sensation. I'm not that. I'm not an image. I don't live in here. I don't live in here. There's so much resistance. Why? Because the separate self that we have invested our whole identity in is being exposed in this investigation as being completely non-existent. It's not there. The self, the separate self around whom we have our lives, our thoughts and feelings and activities and relationships have revolved for so many decades. When we look for it, it's not there. Now, it takes courage and love and clarity to begin to look. And many of us, not all of us, but many of us have to suffer intensely before life pushes us to ask these fundamental questions. Others come to it through other ways, but for many of us it's repeated failure and suffering that makes us say, hang on, just stop. How much longer am I going to go on thinking and feeling this way? Why don't I look at the fundamental presumption? And that starts with what am I? Am I this image, this sensation or cluster of sensations? And as soon as we start looking, you don't have to look very deeply.
No.
It's, as you say, it's obvious that we're not what we thought we were.
You just mentioned love, and that brings me up to another question. You actually talk about in one of your books that love is the natural condition of all our experiences. Can you say more about that?
Yes. So, first of all, let me try to explain what I mean by the word love.
Yes.
Because it's a word that is so used and laden with interpretation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What I don't mean is a feeling in the body, a pleasant sensation in the body. I mean the lack of separation between two apparent objects or people. Normally, we think that I, this self here, loves you, that self there. But in fact, we all know, and we know this from early on in our life when we first fall in love, that the experience of love is a kind of collapse of everything that keeps us separate from one another. It is a sort of dissolution of the me-ness and the you-ness into a kind of merging or union. We all know this. Now, in this collapse of separation, the mind dissolves, because the separation is actually a mind-made separation. It's not real. So the collapse of these boundaries with which we divide ourselves is the dissolution of the mind. And this, we could say, precipitates, or rather reveals, the experience of love, which is the taste of our true nature, the recognition of our own being, its recognition of itself. And the mind, by definition, is not present there. It knows nothing of love. Then the mind returns again, and it returns somehow permeated with this. When the mind rises up again, it rises up saturated with this presence. And so, to account for it, it immediately interprets the experience and says, ah, yes, I love you. Right there, duality is created again. The separate inside me, the separate outside you. And right there, love is denied. So, this experience of love is very familiar. The mistake the mind makes in interpreting it is that love is something that this entity does to that entity. It's just something that exists between these two people. It's not something that exists between me and all the other people, and certainly not something that exists between me and objects. However, if we explore our experience very deeply, not just our experience of one other person, but our experience of anything at all, an object, a bodily sensation, a perception, anything at all, we never find these two elements. We never find an inside self and an outside world. We just find knowing or experiencing. We don't find an experiencer and an object that is experienced. We just find pure experiencing, seamless. It's not made of parts. In other words, and that is what I call love, the absence of parts or entities, the absence of duality. So love is the name, it's what all experience is made of. All experience is equally intimate. It's not just that I'm intimate with one person. I'm equally intimate with everything. The perceptions, sounds, tastes, textures, smells, thoughts, it's all equally intimate, all this close to my self-awareness. So that's why one of the chapters in the book is called "Love is the
natural expression,
the natural condition of
natural
all experience."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's what all experience is made of. In other words, there is no real duality. There is never any separation.
So what happens? I know I experienced it several times.
You experience it all the time.
Yeah. But,
your mind may tell you otherwise, but it's...
Yeah, but there are certain
you experience
things
it all
which,
the time.
Yeah.
Your mind may interpret your experience differently.
Mm.
That's another matter. We're not interested here with the mind's interpretations of experience. We're interested in experience itself. Show me something now in your experience that is at a distance from yourself and made out of something other than yourself. Right now.
Well, that's what I wanted to tell
The
you.
sofa?
Yeah, but there are certain, like, let's for example, I had several times, I'm aware that I experienced this love when I, for example, looked at one of your pots, or I sometimes listen to you talk. Okay. But the feeling is as if I would if I would fall in love with myself.
Yes,
that
exactly.
is the experience.
The only love has no objects. It's not possible to love a person or an object. Love is the experience of knowing only yourself, of realizing that all there is in experience is the presence of yourself, awareness. So true love never has an object. It is not possible to love a person. It is only possible to love love.
Mm. That's beautiful.
So you're right. And sometimes when we see an object or we hear something about the object or the writing or whatever it is has the capacity within it to evoke this collapse of duality.
Yeah.
So it's true that although love is the nature of all experience, not just beautiful objects, not just wise words, all objects, all words, everything. Nevertheless, there are some objects or words that have a kind of potency, and they are able to cut through. In fact, they do it in two ways. One is a cutting way, and the other is more a dissolving way. Either they cut through this sense of duality, or they dissolve it. And a work of art is the name, one of the names that are given to an object that has this power to dissolve what seems to be separation.
Yeah.
And in fact, the experience of beauty and love are identical. Normally, in relation to a person, we call it love. In relation to an object, we call it beauty. But just as we never love a person, so no objects are beautiful. Beauty is presence. The knowing of our own being as it is. It's knowing of itself, unapparently veiled by the thought that says there's a separate inside self here and a separate outside object there. Mm-hmm. The collapse of that experience, as you very nicely say it you collapse into yourself, is precipitated apparently by certain objects. And when it's precipitated by an object, we call it beauty. Mm-hmm. When it's precipitated by a person, we call it love. When it's precipitated by a thought, we call it intelligence. It doesn't matter what we call it. Love, beauty, intelligence, they're all the names we give to this simple, obvious knowing of our own being. It's knowing of itself as it is. And it's all we ever experience right now.
Mm-hmm. I experience it.
Try it. You experience it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's...
Rupert, one of your volumes of presence you called The Art and Peace of Happiness. Can you say more about that?
The Art of Peace and Happiness.
In a very unhappy world, everybody's looking for happiness.
Yes, that's very true. If you stop anyone on the street, all 6+ billion of us on the street, and say, what do you truly want in your life? We all answer the same thing. We may not use the same words, but we all, in one way or another, we say happiness. Some of us may call it love, or peace. Some of us may even say, I want a new job or a new relationship. But why do we want a new job or a new relationship? For the happiness that it delivers. We all want happiness. And the spiritual search, the search for enlightenment, is just a rebranding of the conventional search for happiness. The search for enlightenment is the search for happiness. So, yes, this subtitle, The Art of Peace and Happiness, was to show that the experience, this that we long for, happiness or peace, is essential in our true nature. It's what we are. Happiness is the knowing of our own being. That's what happiness is. The simple knowing of our own being. In other words, our self is happiness itself. It is peace itself. It's not that it is happy or peaceful. No, it is happiness and peace itself. And that is true under all conditions, in all circumstances, at all times. So
when you say, one of the sentences in this book is, happiness is the highest form of practice.
The highest spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's just let me come to that in a minute, because I want to just spend some time really connecting in our experience.
Yes.
What is meant when we say peace or happiness is what we are, to make sure that that's not a wonderful sounding idea that doesn't really seem to be my experience.
That's what I really appreciate your teaching.
Okay, so let's go back to where we started. What can we say for certain about ourselves based on our experience now? Right now, this simple experience. And you rightly said, I am, and I am awake, or I am aware. I am this aware presence. And we've seen that it's not made out of a thought or a sensation or a perception. In other words, it's not made out of something that appears. Yes? Right. And it is ever present. It doesn't come and go. Yes? It's knowing our thoughts, it's knowing our feelings, it's knowing these perceptions. So, in this is a very peaceful circumstance. The thoughts are not very agitated, sensations are not agitated. But now, just as we're talking, agitate your thoughts.
I agitate myself.
Just in other words, think.
Yeah, I think something.
Just imagine waking up in the morning. The phone's going. The pipes have burst. Imagine that there are.
I can do it right here. I forget to check the time when we have to stop our interview.
So suddenly there are lots of there are lots of thoughts. Now you are aware of all these thoughts. Yes, the thoughts are moving quickly, and they all seem to be crowding in on each other. But what about the you that is aware of them? Does that speed up when the thoughts speed up?
No.
When the thoughts begin to conflict with each other, I want to do this, but I think I should do that. I'm not sure whether. Do you become conflicted?
No.
Or are you just there?
Watching the whole thing.
Watching the whole thing. So, in other words, when thoughts become agitated, and do the same experiment for your body. We're sitting here comfortably and peacefully, but we could be moving around, we could be dancing around, we could be on the London Underground, we could be engaged in strenuous activity. But whatever it is that is aware of all those sensations, is it moving around? But when a new sensation here, a new sensation appears, do you begin to flow and move? Or are you always in the same natural, open presence.
Yes.
And what about when the world gets agitated? Again, we have to imagine it because this is peaceful here. But again, imagine you're in London. Perceptions, sights, sounds, smells, perceptions are crowding in. But do you become agitated? The one that sees all of this? Could you become agitated?
No.
Try now. Really try to agitate yourself.
Yes, I can do that.
You can?
Well, not. I mean, I
can agitate your thoughts. Yes?
I can agitate my thoughts.
We're not talking about agitating
yourself. There's always the same serene background.
Yes, yes. Does it become more or less peaceful, or is it inherently peaceful?
It's inherently peaceful.
It's like the space of this room. Yes.
Yeah.
We could call it an aware space. Of course, it's not a space. It has no dimensions. But just as a metaphor, we could liken it to the space in this room. I mean, the space in this room allows everything. It allows us sitting peacefully here, but we could be squabbling and fighting with each other. The space wouldn't become agitated, yes? Its nature is peace,
yes.
Not a peace that is the opposite of agitation. The body and the mind swing from being agitated to not agitated. So the body and the mind go through states of agitation or peace, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a state, a peaceful state in the body or the mind. They come and go. I'm talking about the peace that is you, that is yourself and is ever present.
I understand that, Rupert, and yet, there is the form and there is agitation and whatever. How to bring this serenity into this form?
It's already in the form. You don't have to bring it in.
It's in the form.
Yourself.
But is it then okay to be agitated? Is it okay to be angry?
Just let the mind do whatever it's been conditioned to do. Let the body leave the mind alone, leave the body alone, and leave the world alone. Your body will do whatever is required of it. It's been doing it very nicely for many decades. Likewise, your mind. Just let them do their thing. You be yourself, and let them be themselves. Don't have an agenda with the body and the mind, because your peace is not dependent upon the condition of the body and the mind. If your peace depended upon a peaceful mind, then you would have to sit down and meditate for hours and still your mind in order to access the peace of your true nature. But the peace of your true nature is just ever present. Not only in the back, to begin with, sometimes we find it in the background of experience. Later, it's not always later, but sometimes it becomes more obvious later on that it's also at the heart of our experience. This undisturbable peace, imperturbable peace, it is present at the heart of all experience, independent of the conditions of that experience.
So my mind just says,
yeah.
How does that mean I leave myself completely alone now? Not taking care of my body,
because
doing anything?
You will find that thoughts will arise to remind you to take care of your body. At the appropriate time, when a sensation of hunger appears, thought will arise which says, it's time to stop and get a sandwich for lunch. If you have a headache, a thought will appear that says, I must get an aspirin or go to the doctor. Don't worry, everything will be taken care of. It's taken care of very nicely. So just let your mind do its thing, and your body and the world. Strangely, the only thing that seems to interfere with the smooth functioning of the mind, the body and the world is the belief that we are something other than this open, empty, luminous presence of awareness, and that we are instead an entity, something that lives in here. that belief is the one that causes the trouble in our life. Without that belief, there is no problems. For yourself, you yourself have never had a problem. I mean, the space in this room,
Yes.
does it ever have a problem with what goes on in this room? Does the space mind? Awareness, you cannot have a problem because you offer no resistance to anything. Awareness is empty only in this sense, that it's empty of objects. It's not actually empty, it's full to the brim with love and presence and intelligence, but it's empty of objects. So it takes an object to resist, yes? If someone was to throw a ball through this room, the space would offer no resistance. It was only when you put an object up would it resist. So you, awareness, you don't know the meaning of the word resistance. There's nothing in you that can resist. You're pure openness. The fact that something is appearing, whatever that something is, however good or bad, the fact that it is appearing means that you, awareness, have already said yes to it. You have already said, yes, you are welcome. So what is it that says no? What is it that resists? The I that doesn't like this or that. It's not the I of awareness.
No.
What other I is it? It's a fictional I. It's
incredibly powerful at times.
You
this
give it
fictional
power by believing that. It's the most
I know, but
insubstantial. If you believe that it's powerful, you give it power. But if you see that it's a thought, it's just a thought that rises up, and it is later substantiated at the level of the body with feelings. So this little fragile I entity that is made out of a thought grows a taproot, as it were.
Yeah.
And it gets embedded in the body. So we not only think that I am this limited inside self, much more importantly, we feel that I am this limited, separate self. But to go back, just to go back to what we were saying about happiness, I want to try to make it clear that in your experience of yourself, in its experience of itself, there is no resistance. Now, what do we call the experience of the absolute lack of resistance to what is appearing? What do we call that experience?
Emptiness
Happiness.
or happiness. It's just another word.
Unhappiness, exactly.
Another word for presence,
exactly.
for love. It's all the same.
Unhappiness is always, or suffering is always, I don't like this. Yes?
Yeah.
I don't want what is present. I want what is not present. All suffering, I'm talking about psychological suffering, I'm not talking of physical pain.
Yes.
So yourself, you cannot suffer. You don't know suffering. Because to know suffering, you must resist. You cannot resist. Who is the one that is unhappy? It is the fictional self.
That's also obvious.
Then it's so obvious that you have never been unhappy. You cannot be unhappy, even in the midst of difficult circumstances. Or difficult, I mean demanding circumstances. This peace and happiness, by peace and happiness I don't mean a pleasant sensation in the body-mind or a gleeful, happy expression on your face. That comes and goes. Yeah. But I mean this innate peace and happiness, the absolute lack of agitation and resistance that is yourself. That is ever present. It lies not just in the background of experience, it lies at the heart of all experience. And it's just waiting there, with wide open arms. It's just waiting to be recognized. It has no agenda, so it's not forcing itself. It's just there. All you need to do is look and see. It's there, always with its arms wide open.
So in your own experience, Rupert, do you still have challenges? Is happiness always present?
Happiness, my self-awareness is always present, yes. For me and for you, yes. Are there still challenges in my life? Yes, there are practical challenges, but not psychological ones. There are no challenges for a psychological entity. There are practical challenges. If my son is having difficulty at school, it's a...
I know
respond.
he's very rebellious.
He's terrifically rebellious, and
Yeah.
I love that quality
Yeah.
in him, because it's an expression of his innate sense of freedom. It's another quality that is innate in ourself, this lack of boundary, this freedom. So his rebelliousness, and he was born rebellious, his rebelliousness is a sign of this sense of freedom. And I'm so happy that after 12 years of schooling, school hasn't been able to contain or dampen down this spirit of freedom. But having said that, it also gets him into trouble at school.
Sure.
So there is a practical situation here where as a father, my deepest desire is to keep alive this flame of freedom in him, this spirit of freedom. At the same time, I can see that it's necessary, he has to learn his maths and read books and that kind of thing. So, of course, I want to help him to do that, but to do it in such a way that preserves this spirit of freedom. So that requires sensitivity and skill and love and intelligence. So it's a practical issue in the sense that it's one example of how this understanding is tailored in life to a very specific problem. It's not just sitting on the sofa talking about non-duality. This is a real situation. How is this love and intelligence articulated? How does it respond in this situation? And with the primary aim of keeping alive this flame of freedom, at the same time having to meet everyday demands. So that was an example of a practical situation, a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Does he understand?
No, it would be inappropriate to explain this to a 12-year-old unless he asked, and that would be very unusual, and he doesn't ask. It would be inappropriate to have this kind of conversation. But does he understand? The answer is yes, in a way, because children are so sensitive. I've seen this over and over again with him and his friends, that they pick up the deep motive behind your words and your actions. Yeah. So whatever you say and do, what the child is really feeling and hearing is where it comes from, the understanding underneath it. That is what really the child picks up. So if interaction with a child comes from this experiential understanding that we've been exploring, then somehow it's communicated. Even if, as it is on times, even if it is necessary to be sharp, to say, no, I'm sorry, this is not okay, this behavior is not okay. Even then, in other words, when we may not be overtly loving and friendly and sweet, even then, if the motive is truly love and freedom, then somehow the child will pick that up. And I've seen this over and over again with my son. That these rare moments when something quite sharp is needed, it does the job and then it disappears. 5 minutes later, we're outside playing football again, and it leaves no trace. It's because it's clean. It doesn't come with. It's not directed towards a psychological entity, a separate self, nor does it come from that. It comes from this place of love, and that's where it lands. The child doesn't need to think about it. It wouldn't be appropriate to think about it. And it's best if it's not thought about. It's best if it goes straight into the heart.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And now we, like always, running out of time, and I have hundreds of questions left. But anyway, for the next interview, I just want to spend another moment to show your books. So there are 2 new books coming out from Rupert, by Rupert, and they are called Presents. The one is The Art and Peace of Happiness, and the seamless intimacy of experience. I can highly recommend them, and the reason for that is the transmission of these books is very powerful. And his first book, The Transparency of Things, and I also like to show you our book, the book Conscious TV brought out with some of our non-duality interviews, Conversations on Non-Duality, 26 Awakenings, and 2 of Rupert's interview with us are in there as well. Great. Well, thank you, Rupert. Thank you for coming.
It's always so nice being with you.
And thank you for watching Conscious TV. Goodbye.
Hello, my name's Rupert Spira, and I'm here today with Conscious TV, and Eleonora Gilbert and I are going to engage in a contemplative exploration of the true nature of our experience. Hello, Eleonora. So at least to begin with, I would recommend closing our eyes.
Okay.
And simply allow the mind, the body, and the world to be exactly as they are from moment to moment, without the slightest intention to change them or manipulate them in any way. And if you find that there is some subtle agenda, then that's fine. That subtle agenda is just what's appearing in this moment. You simply be the aware presence to which the mind, the body, and the world are appearing. In fact, we don't really know a mind, body, or world. All we know of the mind in this moment is just the current thought or image. Just let the current thought do whatever it wants. It doesn't have to think about what is being spoken here. Give your thoughts total freedom. Nor do we actually know the body as it is normally conceived to be. In fact, if our eyes are closed, the body is just a tingling, amorphous cluster of sensation. So let the label body, leave it on one side, and just allow the current sensation to appear, to be exactly as it is in your open, empty, aware presence. Feel free to move, change positions whenever you like. And likewise, we don't really know a world as it is normally conceived. We just know the current perception, that is, the current sight, sound, taste, texture, or smell. So just let the current perception be exactly as it is. The faint hum of the air conditioning, the sound of traffic in the background, the sound of this voice, the sound of people talking in the next room. However our perceptions are appearing, give them total freedom. And in giving our thoughts, sensations, and perceptions total freedom to be as they are, we reclaim the inherent freedom of our true nature. This aware presence which knows thoughts, sensations, and perceptions is inherently free of them, like the space of a room is inherently free of whatever objects appear within it. Taste the freedom and independence of your own intimate being. Be that knowingly. We are that, whether we realize it or not, but we usually mistake ourselves for a thought or a sensation. So now we just reclaim what was always ours. Nothing special needs to happen to be this presence. No manipulation of the mind, the body, or the world. No cessation of our thoughts in particular is necessary. The freedom that is inherent in our true nature of awareness is independent of the body, the mind, and the world. Taste that freedom. Be that freedom. See in your experience that you, this aware presence, cannot be disturbed by thoughts, sensations, and perceptions, just like a TV screen cannot be disturbed by an image that appears on it. Taste this, don't think about it. Ask yourself, is there any sense of lack present in myself? Don't refer to thoughts or sensations. Refer to yourself, the one that knows thoughts and sensations. Can you find any lack there? There may be thoughts of lack. There may be feelings of lack. Just let them be exactly as they are. But you, the one that knows these thoughts and feelings, is anything lacking for that one?
No, absolutely nothing lacking.
Could could yourself resist any thought or sensation or perception? Thoughts may resist, feelings may resist, but can you resist anything?
No. It's funny actually, because I thought I could, but no.
Yes.
It's just kind of flood.
Yes, you're just pure openness. You don't know the meaning of resistance. Thought does. Feeling does. Let them be. If there are thoughts and feelings of resistance, just let them do their thing. You, the space in which they appear, is inherently without resistance. Nothing can touch you. Nothing can harm you. Nothing can agitate you. Nothing can destroy you, change you, move you. And yet you touch all things intimately. You, this aware presence, depends on nothing, but all seeming things depend on you for their existence. Taste that freedom, that independence, that inability to resist the current experience. Could you ever lose this lack of resistance? Could any experience turn you into a resisting presence?
Not the experience, no. No.
Whatever see in your experience now, whatever the condition of thoughts, sensations and perceptions, this freedom, this peace or lack of agitation, this happiness or lack of resistance is always present at the heart of every experience. It is intimately yourself. It is never parted from you. It is the only security, and it is with you all the time. It is you. Now, a question that I'm often asked goes something like this. This all makes very good sense when my eyes are closed. Everything seems to be inside me. But when I open my eyes, I seem to contract inside the body, and the world and others seem to be projected outside again. So let your eyes open now. And let's continue this exploration with our eyes open. And this, of course, is a prelude to continuing this exploration when we have left the privacy and comfort of this room and we're driving home in rush hour, and when there are far more demanding perceptions and thoughts calling for our attention, to see that what we're saying here is always the case under all circumstances. So now the world suddenly appears, all this room suddenly appears as a visual perception, which seems to announce, I am an outside world. I am distant, separate, other than you, than myself. So let's take the visual perception of this room. All we know of this room is the experience of seeing. Yes?
Yes.
If we remove the experience of seeing, there's no experience of a room. So in fact, thought says there is a room, there is an outside world. But if we come close to our experience, we see no. We don't know the outside world, we just know our perception of an outside world. But we can come closer still to our experience. We don't know a perception, we just know the experience of perceiving, in this case, the experience of seeing. Where does seeing take place?
You're asking me right now.
Yes, right now.
Right here.
Where does seeing? Does it take place 5 meters away from you?
No.
2 meters away?
No.
1 inch away?
No.
How close is seeing?
Like I am seeing.
It's closer than close. In fact, in the experience of seeing, can you find one part that does the seeing and another part that is seen? Or is seeing one seamless substance?
It's one seamless substance.
And what is the relation of yourself? Not yourself, the body, yourself, this aware presence. How close is it to the seeing?
Well, there is no distance whatsoever.
There's no distance or difference. There's one substance there.
Yes.
It is yourself, the only substance present in seeing.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
yourself. It's closer than close. It's not that there are two things close to each other. It's that there are not two things there. Advaita, not two things there to begin with. There is just the seamless intimacy of experiencing.
Yes.
And when we reach out, as it were, and try to touch, what is the substance of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling? What substance is there? All we find is this aware presence, our self.
Yes.
Now sometimes the mind comes and says, but when I touch the world, there we are. There we have something. We have an outside world, something that is not me. So touch your sofa. Your only knowledge of the sofa is the experience of sensing, touching. Yes?
Yes.
Touching and seeing, but leave seeing on one side, just touching. Now where does touching take place?
Right here, right now. Right here. It's not distant from
Are there
anything.
two substances present in the
No.
experience of touching,
I can
myself
see,
and an
yes.
object?
No, especially, clearly if I close my eyes, it's even closer.
No, it doesn't get closer. Close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Does touching become closer?
No, it just feels like
Open your eyes.
more imminent.
Does
and it's
anything,
just there.
when you open your eyes, does anything appear at a distance? Seeing appears.
Yeah.
But does it appear at a distance?
Not the touching, no.
Is seeing further away than thinking?
No. No.
Is sensing? Sense the soles of your feet, for instance.
Yes.
And now hold that up as one experience, the sensing, called the soles of my feet, and seeing of this body, Rupert. Does one take place closer than the other?
No.
Is one made out of me and the other not made out of me? Is sensing made out of me, but
No.
seeing made out of not me?
It's all one thing.
It's all one thing. What are we going to call that one thing? We can't give it a name. Because to give it a name means to imply some kind of an opposite. It is this
Yes.
rather than that. That is why the ancients were so wise and so humble. They just said it is not two. They didn't say it is one. They knew it cannot be named.
Yes.
It cannot be found as an object. It is the intimacy of our own being. That is the substance of all experience. All experience is utterly intimate. And the name we give to this intimacy is love. Love is the natural, ever-present condition of all experience. So now, as we leave this room, in fact, we don't leave this room. Awareness never does anything and never goes anywhere. What's going to happen is that a flow of seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, thinking will take place. It'll all take place in ourself, made out of ourself. So this meditation, if we can call it a meditation, it never ends. It's not an activity of the mind that we're engaging in. The mind can go off and do whatever it needs to do. The body can go off. All we know is a flow of thinking, imagining, sensing, feeling, hearing, seeing, touching. All equally intimate.
It's very beautiful.
Equally close. No separation is ever actually experienced. So stay with that intimacy. And it's quite possible to take the intimacy that we feel now, to go out into life, to carry on a completely ordinary, everyday life, responding to whatever presents itself, without ever losing this sense of intimacy. Everything equally close, equally made out of myself, this open, empty, luminous presence of awareness.
Thank you. It's so sweet.
It's very sweet, yes. Thank you, Eleonora.
Yeah.
Thank you.